Today's show, you want to get nuts? Well, let's get nuts. We're going to be talking about The Flash. We're going to be talking about that Batman cameo. I mean, there were a few of them, but we're going to be talking about that Batman cameo. And then we're also going to be talking about the Reddit strike. Seems like a bunch of moderators over at Reddit, they've taken their conversations, their subreddits private, and the CEO isn't happy about it. He even called them the landed gentry. We're going to define what landed gentry means because apparently this guy who looks like he's 35 years old is giving us terminology from like the 1900s. But before all of that, we're going to be talking about The Flash, which is a DC multiverse movie that I'm talking about while I find the intro package. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to stop wasting your time. Let's get that to the show. Welcome to the show. This is Oh So Curious. I am your host, and I want to get nuts. And along with me for the ride today, we have Max and Angelina. How are you guys doing?
The microphone's back.
Yes, it is. I pulled it out like right when the intro was going up.
So. Honestly, it horrifies me, but it's okay. We're going to get through it. I'm good. How's everybody doing this week?
Great.
What about you, Dan?
I'm doing well. I'm quite excited. I haven't watched. I mean, okay, look. Here's the thing. I like superhero movies. I think those people who know me know that. I watched the Transformers movies midweek last week, and it was a little underwhelming. It had its moments, but then when I watched The Flash, this was the kind of movie where the nostalgia worked wonders on me in many ways. Because I'm just a big DC fan, so I'm still kind of, basking in the afterglow of The Flash, even though the movie wasn't quite the best thing ever, but it's, it was a good movie. I enjoyed it. I technically watched it twice. I'll explain what that means. But nonetheless, I really enjoyed a lot of the cameos, and one particular cameo really I was giggling at quite a bit. Anyway, I'm feeling well. It's a good day to be a DC fan.
Great. We love that.
That's very nicely put. Straight away, if you say something like, it's a good day to be a DC fan, that means they did tickle your fancy somewhere in there.
Yeah, they did.
It's true.
Nice.
It absolutely. No, it's a movie that there's some complaints about it online. I was seeing those before I went to see the movie because Twitter exploding with all that information beforehand.
Based on the one comment I made before we started taping, I already know you're getting a little defensive about the movie. So I'm
getting defensive?
Quite a
Me?
lot. Yeah.
Defensive?
Mm-hmm. You were like,
what am I defending?
I can totally come back and say some other stuff. I was like, so he really likes the movie, guys.
But you sounded offensive, so I had to be defensive to kind of balance things out. You know what I mean? I just had to do that.
We're friends, guys. We swear it's all good. It's all good here in the land of talking about DC movie characters. Are we just jumping right into the review today? We're just going for it?
Let's just go for it.
Going?
Spoiler warning, because there's gonna be spoilers. I can't not talk about the spoilers. So yeah, The Flash. It's the new DCU film that may have introduced a new DCU Batman. I mean, we're not sure. The other day I was looking at an article talking about this, where apparently James Gunn refuted this, but then I couldn't find the linked tweet from James Gunn on Twitter, and so I don't know if it is indeed true or not. But I mean, look, here's the thing. That happens at the end of the movie. The whole cameo bit that I'm talking about. Let's talk about the movie that plays out for the 2 hours before that cameo happens. And Angelina, you went and saw the movie. So before I give my thoughts, because I've already sort of said that I liked the movie, not the greatest thing ever, but I liked the movie. What did you think about the film?
So immediately out of the movie, I was giving it a solid 8 out of 10. And then by the time I got home, it was at a 7 out of 10. It just, I don't know. I really liked Ezra Miller's performance. I think he was brilliant. I do see why the director is there's no Flash without Ezra Miller. I feel like he redeemed himself in my eyes for whatever his personal issues were, which maybe says too much about the credit I give actors on screen. That's a part of the problem. We don't know yet. Leaving that behind.
I mean, it comes with your
didn't really-
trade. You should support your fellow actors. So I suppose you're excused.
Yeah, I don't know. I also wouldn't be yelling at old ladies or whatever he did to get arrested. So there's that. But
Yeah.
with that being said, I did really like the movie. But when you start to think about it, it was a little too reminiscent of the MCU. Like, I feel like they're copying Marvel a little bit too much in the whole metaverse system. I feel like the metaverse sort of, at this point, has been so abused, like, amongst all of the different...
I don't mean to correct you, but I think you mean to say the multiverse.
Multiverse, metaverse, multi-dimensional, try to connect all of the movies together. It's literally like they're throwing up the same MCU recipe. Like, it just, like, the DCU, like, barfed it back up again. And
It's not as original anymore, but they do have so much IP. They try to somewhat, pull in, and they're running out of ideas. I mean, what other way would there be for them to have space for those, like Danjino?
But also,
what are we talking about? Are we talking about like blockbuster movie making in general? Or are we talking about
if they doing, because Angelina mentioned that they're doing the MCU trick, so they include the metaverse.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, here's
and stuff.
Okay, well, let me say this. Like, hey, nothing against the MCU, but the MCU doesn't own the concept of the multiverse. In fact, the MCU is not even the first franchise to try the multiverse. It's been done before in the past. And, like, there's other examples of franchises out there that have tried to do it. And it's not the only franchise doing it today. Like, just last week, we were talking about Transformers. And at the end of that movie, again, spoiler alert if you haven't seen that movie, but the end of that movie ties into G.I. Joe. And now all of a sudden, people are, like, excited about how are G.I. Joe going to cross over with the Transformers, which has happened in the comics
that's
before
not
too.
New. My issue is trying to connect all of the different universes and all of the different Batmans and all of the different this. It's literally the same concept as MCU's. Like, it is pulling it in. It copies Spider-Verse like so much. It just drives me nuts.
But it's not really
like,
copying.
Why did they have to do that?
But I wouldn't say it's copying in the sense
Ooh,
that
nice debate there.
Spider-Verse movies.
Why? Why do they have to do this recipe right now?
Hang on.
The Spider-Verse movies, this Flash movie, by the way, has been in development longer than the Spider-Verse movies have been in development for.
I don't know if that's a good argument, Dan.
Hold on, but that's not let me finish. The first Spider-Verse movie started development after a few years after this Flash movie went into development. That's maybe not speaking highly of Flash itself, maybe more to its detriment. But the fact of the matter is, from the get-go, this Flash movie was considered most likely to be a Flashpoint adaptation from the comics. The comic that came out like I think a good decade or so ago. So that comic itself is been around for a while, and that's what this is loosely adapting, which is a multiverse kind of a comic book story where in the comics DC basically rebooted their universe and sort of combined the original time continuity that they had in the comics with the newer continuity and kind of melded it together and launched a whole new era. And this was around the time New 52 was still ongoing and stuff, so it was a whole comic book thing, and this movie is sort of adapting that. The MCU announced their multiverse thing around the same time, so all of these things were going on around the same time. The Spider-Man No Way Home, that was also being put into development around the same time. It just happens to be that this movie has been delayed and look, it has gone through 5 sets of directors, but even the latest director came in like well before the pandemic, and this movie has had like 4 or 5 delays to getting out there. So just because it's the last one out doesn't mean it's copying the others. It's kind of like, if you went to see Olympus Has Fallen and White House Down, doesn't mean the 2 movies copied each other, even though both of the movies, the White House came under siege by a foreign power, and then the president and one of his trustees, Secret Service guards,
but you also have no evidence.
But it doesn't matter if it's Channing Tatum protecting Jamie Foxx or Gerard Butler protecting Aaron Eckhart. The fact of the matter is, this happens in Hollywood all the time. You could have gone to see Battleship LA Battle LA or Battleship or Skyrim or whatever. There were like 5 same kind of alien invasion movies.
To answer my question, is there like alternative way to bring all that IP
well, I would say
without, you know,
but-
going into like multiverse?
if you think about it, like they clearly knew that this has been done before, so they couldn't do it the same way. If you look at the way in the Doctor Strange opens up or accidentally opens up the sky with all the other multiversal things that we barely see any little bits of in Spider-Man No Way Home, the visuals of that in Spider-Man No Way Home in the third act are very different from the way the visuals are in The Flash when they go to that little, end part where you see all these worlds colliding.
But
which, by the way, it was cool kind of how it tied into the marketing of like this summer worlds collide, and they literally had like, I was like, I know it's a little dumb too, but like I appreciated the clever marketing as a marketing professional. I'm like, okay, I can kind of appreciate that connection. But I think the way they described it, like there was one shot they took at the Avengers in this, because in the Avengers Infinity War, when the Ancient One is explaining to Mark Ruffalo's Hulk or Bruce Banner like how the timelines diverge when you take the Infinity Stones, and she kind of draws this out and you have these like different paths that diverge. In this movie, when they go and find Michael Keaton's Batman, he kind of puts these 2 pasta strings on the desk and says, well, you may have seen before talked about like this divergence situation, but in the actuality, you're creating a whole new timeline and they're kind of intersecting at certain points, but then it becomes spaghetti. That whole spaghetti metaphor, I was like, scientifically speaking, that's actually far more accurate than what the Avengers movies described. And that Infinity War explanation for how their multiverse works was so convoluted that it's downright stupid and doesn't even work because it contradicted itself 3 times in the movie. Whereas here, I think they were more consistent. Still, there's some things that I couldn't quite explain because causality-wise, I'm like, well, if you created the Dark Flash, and then, but I guess the way they explained it is because the past and the future is totally different timelines, so that Dark Flash always existed, but then he gets killed there, so that's like a closed time loop.
Okay, Dave,
so
you're running away with the movie. You're running away with it.
It works. I'm just saying the logic of the movie works, and it works better than other movies that have done it before. Especially, I mean, in recent times, it's the MCU. I have not seen Everything Everywhere All at Once. Hate me only one for that. But I'm not sure how they did their explanation. But I think the Flash's explanation for the multiverse was logically more sound than what I've seen in other movies in recent times.
Yeah, Everything Everywhere All at Once, I think, had the most concise way of explaining the multiverse.
But Max, you gotta see the spaghetti analogy that Batman or Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne has in the movie. It's actually quite clever. I really like the way they explain it.
The moment you mentioned spaghetti, I was like, oh, okay, you got me.
Yeah, but I don't even know if necessarily like that spaghetti metaphor was really taking a crack at the MCU.
No, just that first part, because it was specifically.
But I don't even think that's true, because that's the common theme when you think of time travel. That's what people think of, right? You even talk about like fate.
No, because it depends.
Hold on,
like
hold on. So when you talk about fate and destiny, you have choices, right? And so it branches off. So even like my mom being a psychic and me growing up super spiritual, that's what you talk about. So I don't know if that's a direct crack at the MCU multiverse. I think maybe that's a big stretch there, because that's a common sort of idea about time travel. But I do agree that
You lost me.
Oh, no. So like you talk about life choices, right? So like even when you look at your palms, you talk about spirituality. You have different choices that help branch off. So your fate and your lifeline, it changes here, right? It changes linearly based on your choices through life. So like what the DCEU was saying is they were using spaghetti and they're saying it's not linear. Dan is saying that they're taking a crack at Marvel. I don't think they are. I think they're taking a crack at, that's like a really common idea about time travel, or like going back and changing things affects linearly versus like no,
I don't.
Yeah, time travel, it just makes me think of Dark again.
Yeah, no, well, the way Dark did it was actually like, it was so German of them, the way they approached it, is because it's they really were like logic, except the foundation of that logic did not make any sense in terms of, nuclear waste created.
Are you
this
literally
portal.
pulling up photos of spaghetti?
Yeah, no, I am, because I wanted to reference. Okay, actually, this is less relevant because I don't think the scene itself has. It's the movie's so new. Nobody has probably gotten that particular scene out on the internet yet. But this is the exact shot I'm referring to. And if you've seen the movie and you've seen where Michael Keaton's character literally puts two uncooked strands of spaghetti on the desk and then bends one like this way and says,
Yeah.
"Oh, you've seen the divergence kind of version of the explanation." Well, in reality, it's more like this. When you jump into a new timeline, it's an entirely new timeline, past and future, where that's different from your current timeline that you came
Oh,
from.
that's clever. Okay,
That's
now
what
I
I
get it.
mean.
Thanks,
And I'm
Dan.
not saying they're
Yeah,
taking a shot.
that's
I'm
really
like, yeah,
good.
they literally reference
No,
me
that's
because for most
just
people,
much different to
Yeah.
what Marvel did. So I get it. Okay.
exactly. It's
That's
and
cool.
so it's like, because this movie is full of cultural references. I mean, we're talking about time travel. This movie makes a pretty big deal out of bringing up Back to the Future multiple times.
Yeah,
And
multiple
I'll be
times,
honest with
actually.
you, I'm actually very intrigued because I would have been interested in watching a version of Top Gun Maverick where Kevin Bacon was Maverick and Pete Mitchell instead of Tom Cruise.
So what's wrong with the film? Because, okay, if it had quite an innovative way of talking about multiverse,
I mean,
and Ezra Miller was really good, according to Angelina, why? I mean, an audience score is pretty good.
Yeah.
Is it like
It's-
this
Rotten Tomatoes is-
5 or 7 directors? What's the issue?
there was a lot of CGI and not all of it was great. I would say that's a pretty big drawback. There were some weird CGI moments where you're like, oh, wait,
Was it
what?
where they like key scenes or kind of filler scenes?
No, it was just kind of all over the place. There was a
Right.
lot of CGI in this movie. They CGI'd babies. They CGI'd. There was a lot of CGI. You can see Dan's face. He's laughing at the CGI baby.
there was a lot of like CGI, which director Andy Muschietti, this is an article on Gizmodo if you want to find it. He talked about this to IO9 where they asked him like, look, the movie looks weird at times, and it does because, like you said, Angelina, the CGI looks a little wonky, a little well, it doesn't look photoreal. That's the big reason why people notice it. So, basically the director Andy Muschietti, who, by the way, we just got an announcement this week that Andy Muschietti is going to be also directing The Brave and the Bold, which is the new Batman movie in the new DCEU under James Gunn and Peter Safran. But as far as this movie is concerned, Andy Muschietti said that, look, this is from the perspective of Barry Allen from Flash. It's we use real babies, but of course the idea is you want to show them from the perspective of the Flash, so everything is distorted in terms of light and texture. That's literally coming from Barbara and Andy Muschietti, the brother sister.
That was
combo.
my thought, that there might be like a stylistic choice behind it, and considering how good the CGI is, like all over the place across the board in every single movie, I weirdly appreciate when things look wonky, when you can see that it's like I remember in at uni when we were learning about film, like sometimes you really miss this theatrical kind of feeling that films have, because everything tries to be as real and as
like
probable.
What you see when you walk outside your house, right?
Exactly.
Like,
and the point of going to movies, I sound like from 50s.
Okay, but literally this quote, we used all real babies. I'm so dead.
Wow. But yeah, going to the movies, it was like an event. So going and being taken by the magic and, Georges Méliès and everything like that, that's what the movies were about. So I don't know. I would give it a go. You got me at the spaghetti.
Even for me, even arguing here with Dan, because he clearly thinks it's like a 10 out of 10 movie, I'd still give it a 7 out of 10.
I didn't give it a score yet, for the record. But can I just to finish this conversation on the visual effects, because this is a big deal on the internet. Because of course Twitter loves to everybody on Twitter is a visual effects expert, even though nobody is for the most part. Visual effects, with the time when people notice them, it's usually because, like you said, they're unfinished, or in this case, they're stylized, but maybe the fact that they're stylized is not clear enough. So I think maybe if anything, the director should have made some effort to kind of specify to maybe one throwaway line of dialogue or something that what we're seeing is not meant to look photoreal in the first place. I sort of got that after the first few times we saw it, and I was like, okay, I get it. Because, like, for example, where Superman is punching and that has become a meme now. Oh, look, this is the last time we're seeing Henry Cavill Superman. It looks so unreal. I'm like, dude, the whole thing, just look at every like piece of that, scene. They all look like that. It's like Ben Affleck's Batman doesn't quite look photoreal, and it's all the same deal. But the point is, ultimately, the kind of VFX that where VFX exists, but people don't notice them. Like, for example, every time they're walking on the street in New York City, the skyline beyond like the ground level buildings, everything else is CGI. All that cityscape is completely CGI, but we don't notice it because it's done so well. It's photoreal. That entire scene where the Flash is in front of the hospital, all those buildings are mostly all CGI. There's a lot of things where we don't notice the visual effects, but the visual effects are there. I bet you they replaced a lot of the objects on the walls in Barry's apartment that we totally don't realize they did it because it's done so well and it's hidden VFX. And even if it was shoddy, you wouldn't notice it because you're not paying attention. And when the visual effects in this movie that people notice as bad are not actually meant to be photoreal. So I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding, and it happens. There's other movies that have like taken hits for that kind of deal. Yeah. So I understand that.
My biggest issue overall with it is all of the superhero movies are becoming one and the same. Like, my friend drew a big tie to Deadpool. The comedy in this is giving Ryan Reynolds. I think Ezra Miller did a great job. He's also playing two different versions of himself, which he does great. Like, younger Barry, hilarious. That laugh, I was in tears. It was so funny. Like, he is a great actor. He does such a good job. But my biggest issue is that it doesn't matter if this was in production first. If they've gone through 3 script revisions and you think they're taking cracks at Marvel, that even more supports my point. Like, they were copying and trying to take cracks at the MCU in certain ways. I want to see a new movie. Like, I want to see a new superhero movie. I miss the nostalgia of like going and seeing a movie and it sort of standing on its own in a way. Like, I'm so sick of like having to watch sort of the same rephrased script over and over again.
But I mean, honestly, I didn't see a lot of. I think this, in my opinion, this movie is about as different from Spider-Man: No Way Home as you can get, and as different from the Spider-Verse films as you can get. And it's very, if anything, this movie felt a little bit of a hodgepodge of connecting different DC things at times, which was on purpose because that's really what this movie is. It's a multiverse thing that's both a tribute to all that has come before in the world of all the different for DC franchises of the years, while it's also trying to kind of, set a path forward. However vaguely it sets a path forward for DC, it's, by the end, you don't really know who's who and who's going to play what moving forward. But ultimately, I thought that, look, here's the thing. To answer that Ryan Reynolds question, Ryan Reynolds does not have a copyright or trademark on his style of comedy. For those of us who have been around long enough to watch Jim Carrey in his prime, I can tell you Ryan Reynolds is basically
doing a crack at me because I'm young? I know Jim Carrey. I'm like,
right. Well, I'm saying, like, if you want to make that comparison, but I'm going to say, like, well, Ryan Reynolds is basically doing Jim Carrey, like, and or Jim Carrey could be doing like somebody else. Like, you can keep going back and back and back. It's not that, to me, honestly, this Ezra Miller was a version of the Flash. Like, I thought he was the most entertaining part of the movie because, like, there were scenes where literally, okay, so when he loses his powers and the other younger Barry gets his powers, and he's like pretend like okay, and he does the whole pose thing. Internet's made fun of the way he runs as the Flash over the years since Justice League came out, and they totally poked fun at it when he's doing it and nothing's happening and he's just doing this movement in a circle. I was like laughing at that because I'm like, look, that is specifically there to poke fun at something that the internet has been laughing at for a long time, which is like, it's totally fine.
I didn't even know about that, but when I had to use the restroom, and like at the end when we were leaving, and I did it to like be funny, and I froze in the position, and Jake just stopped. She was like, "I'm not coming anywhere near you." It was pretty funny. It's a good stance he's got going there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I like ultimately the thing about this movie that to me works the best is the fact that it's a tribute to all of DC that has come before, which I think is timely because right now we're kind of at a crossroads with DC. We are going into a whole new era with James Gunn and doing like a soft reboot where they're going to bring some characters over, some not over, and we can talk about that briefly before we finish up. But they're also at the same time now, like, saying, okay, all of these other characters and worlds sort of exist in their own universe. And so there is this multiverse of characters, which is what the comics with Marvel and DC have done for years, decades. It's just now Marvel and DC have been, embracing that in the movie form. Because for a long time, they were like, oh, we don't want you guys to remember that Ben Affleck played Daredevil all those years ago. But now they're like, oh, no. We want to do that because it's nostalgia. We don't want you to remember Spider-Man 3, the bad Tobey. No. Tobey Maguire's coming back. Spider-Man. Oh, no, Andrew Garfield's coming back too. Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Christopher
Reeve's Superman. Yeah. It works.
It's been a proven formula.
It's an exercise. Yeah, movie making is an exercise in business. It's an exercise in making money. And the way however you can make money, if it's through nostalgia, you do it. And in this movie, there was some pandering, but a lot of the nostalgia bits worked for me. I really enjoyed the Nicolas Cage nostalgia with his version of Superman.
That was probably the funniest cameo.
The fact that movie, because didn't we talk about this?
Yeah, we talked about it briefly last week, and we were both like, wait, what?
Yeah. Nicolas Cage
so that
right?
cameo is happening in the movie.
Oh, there's a lot of cameos.
But we get to see Nicolas Cage in the cape.
Yeah.
Now
he's
got
got long
to see
hair.
that film.
He's got the Superman symbol. He's wearing his Superman live suit.
Like his hair is long, like the longest Superman hair we've ever seen.
They didn't try to de-age him. He's like
a little bit. A little bit. You could tell.
But also Nicolas Cage as Superman is it confirmed for me the weirdest casting for Superman of all time.
But
like seeing him in the cape, seeing him with the hair and the glowing red eyes, it was like, wow, that doesn't.
But considering that Tim Burton was gonna direct the movie, are you surprised at that casting?
Yeah.
Still.
Helena Bonham Carter.
Well, I'm surprised he didn't make
Catwoman.
Johnny Depp Superman at that point. He loves Johnny Depp. It's his favorite.
But it's like Martin Scorsese, right? Like Martin Scorsese used to work with De Niro all the time, and then he was like, De Niro, you got old, so I'm going to work with Leo now. It's like these directors kind of go with actors. I'm not to say he hasn't. He's directed a De Niro film recently, anyway. But with Tim Burton, it used to be Michael Keaton, and then it was, I don't know how many Nick Cage things they've done, but I think then he moved on to working with Johnny Depp. So there's the directors like working with certain actors and certain like the crew behind the scenes. It's normal. But coming back to this movie though, I will say that ultimately, and we can't let this not be a thing that we talk about. That Batman cameo at the end, and yet look, spoiler warning once again. At the end of the movie, much like in the Flashpoint Paradox comic book, and even the animated movie, at the end of the film, like Barry has basically fixed the timeline. Oh, Mags is not listening. Okay, Barry has fixed the timeline, and the only thing he changed this time, so he of course like let his mother die and he let her go, but then he moved the tomatoes from the middle shelf to the top shelf, so that way the footage they're presenting at his dad's trial. His dad looks up at the camera and therefore there's an alibi, and he gets released from the accusation that he killed his mom. So that minor change, apparently the butterfly effect leads to the Batman of the world changing too. So as explained earlier, Barry has probably not ended up in his original timeline again. He's in an even different timeline that's close enough in every other way almost, but except it's still different. And that's also referred to in the spaghetti analogy earlier in the movie by Michael Keaton's Batman. But in this case, they initially have him on a phone call. And as soon as I heard the line of dialogue, I was like, that is not Ben Affleck's voice. Wait. And he says it the second time. I'm like, no. And then the car pulls up. And then, of course, they have a security guard clearing all the media. And then out comes from behind him George freaking Clooney. And I was like, yes. Yes, I love the Batman.
How did they get him to do that?
I bet he still
Do
has
you think
his
we'll
back
get
credit
Robin
card.
back if he's the new Batman?
I would love him to come back. Look, NCIS,
Wouldn't that be cool?
NCIS
actually?
LA is done. He's got nothing going on. I need Chris O'Donnell to come back in and be Robin, and then be the
And
former Robin.
who was the
They
bad
can-
girl? Alicia Silverstone, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Arnie will make a comeback too. Just bring the whole cast of Batman Forever. No, Batman and Robin.
Break the ice. Chill. Yeah, I love that version of the. He was the only guy who knew that this was a campy movie, so he went all out for it. Whereas everybody else thought they were in a very serious Batman and Robin film. But I'm like, Arnold knows what's up. Like, this guy knows what kind of movie this is.
He just played with it. Yeah.
I love
It was
it.
historical.
I would even. What's her? Why am I forgetting her name right now? Who played Poison Ivy? She was
Uma
Thurman.
It was Uma Thurman, yeah.
Yep. I'm not afraid to say I did have a crush on Uma Thurman because that movie was like one of those movies growing up. That was my guilty pleasure. Still is. In fact, now that I know that George Clooney just came back in this movie, I'm going to probably go back and watch because it's been a long time since I've watched Batman and Robin.
Yeah, I think I saw the movie
What's
when I
with
was
this
very young.
Oh my god.
That's a terrible score. That's possibly the worst score I've ever seen.
I mean, Bane was shocking. I'm really happy Chris Nolan decided to redo Bane. Because the last
Although
version
some
of
people
Bane
would
had-
say that Bane was more comic book
But
accurate.
Tomb
at least
Raider
in
only
terms
has
of
a
how he looked.
20%. I
Really?
loved Tomb Raider. I loved all of the Tomb Raider movies. So
Look at the consensus. Joel Schumacher's tongue-in-cheek attitude hits an unbearable limit. I'm like, okay, whatever. And Batman and Robin, resulting in a frantic and mindless movie that's too jokey to care much for. I'm like, that last part of the sentence, just sign me up. I will watch that movie like once a month for the rest of my life and not care, because just the parts with Mr. Freeze alone are worth the watch. Or where there's this one part at the end where like all three of the bad people are there and they're like, where do you think he went? And then George Clooney's Batman goes like, maybe he's hibernating. I'm like and they're talking about Mr. Freeze, and like
so
maybe
this
he's
movie
hibernating.
There's
came
so
out
many puns.
the year I was
Like-
born. So I have seen it, but I forgot about it because I saw it when I was like 6 years old. Maybe 7. Maybe.
It
Like,
was
this
like
movie is so
once a
old.
month once a month it was like played on the local
Yeah.
like channel in UK. It was
I had it
really
on
fun.
VHS.
They actually played all of them like on repeat. So like in 1 year you would get to watch all 4 of them.
Yeah.
4 times at least.
Batman, was it Batman?
Begins.
No. Batman Begins comes out. Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, and then Batman Begins,
No.
which is a whole new trilogy.
No, Batman Begins was the second one. There was no
Batman no,
Return.
It was Batman.
You're talking
I'm
about
pretty
the
sure-
one with the penguin and Danny DeVito's penguin and Selena Kyle.
Yeah,
That
the
was
1992 Batman Returns.
Batman Returns. Okay. And the first one was Jack
Batman.
Nicholson as Joker.
Correct.
That
Yep.
was still like pretty cool
Right.
performance.
It was.
Yeah.
I am the expert on this because I grew up. Batman is my favorite superhero of all time. Still is to this day. I had this
That's
particular
true.
Batman and Robin movie on VHS. I would rent the VHS copies of Batman Beyond and watch that TV show. I love Batman the animated series. I didn't really like the Batman Brave and the Bold animated series, but I really loved all the classic Batman animated content as well as all the movies from the 80s and 90s, and keeping up with all the recasting.
Batman.
Well, that's a 60s Batman, which by the way they did have Adam West Batman that they had a reference to it. But remember, like there's a shot in the movie Angelina where the worlds he's running.
They actually showed like 3 different Supermans too, like
Christopher Reeves,
all of them.
Superman, and then the
Yeah.
old Supergirl TV series. I forgot who's the actress that played her. They showed the Nicolas Cage one, and then earlier in the movie they showed
like
Henry
the original
Cavill's.
Superman in the black and white. I have no idea who played him.
He was totally animated. Well, oh yeah, you're right. They did show that Superman. Yeah, it was like
the original. It had to have come out in like the 50s
like
or something.
the 40s. I think.
Oh,
like
wow.
it was
Yeah, it was
way
old.
like 40s, 50s. Like
Old.
TV was new back then, kind of a deal.
Incredible.
Yeah, you're right. And then you might have noticed that earlier when, at the beginning of the movie, we're like, oh, can't you get Superman? And then, was it Barry is talking to Alfred, and there's like a bank robbery gone wrong. And so he's like, oh yeah, I already tried Wonder Woman. She's not answering. Superman's busy. And then on the TV, you see Superman like trying to stop a volcano from killing a bunch of people. And I think it was I think Peru or something that he was doing that. So they did sort of had a Henry Cavill
Was
cameo.
that actually Henry Cavill?
I bet you it was just an animated thing. It wasn't really his
you
face.
don't see it really enough.
The closest thing to Henry Cavill was when he's in like the chronosphere, whatever the time thing is in the Speed Force.
You only get like this much
and
of
he's
it.
doing this punching thing.
Yeah, like this much. Like they really cut Henry Cavill out of this movie, which made me
Well, there was stories out recently that apparently his representation at the time was very selective about what they wanted him to be a part of, and so they only let him film that one scene that ended up in the end of Black Adam. And then right after they announced that Henry Cavill is no longer going to be Superman, he fired his representation and went to a new agency because he wasn't happy with the fact that they were only interested in him being in a new solo Superman movie and really limited his ability to do other stuff. Now, some people will say, "Oh, yeah, but can't the actor just do what he wants, and the agency has to listen to him?" No,
they really can't.
Exactly. So, Angelina, you can speak to how that kind of works in terms of agents and actors, and it's not as much of the actor telling them what they do. It's a little bit of a
question. So, if they touched upon like so many different iterations of Superman and Batman and stuff, is there, and Dan, I think you'll know this, is there any way in the world that we might see in like DC and Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy somewhat intertwined?
Maybe like recently, this week, by the side note, this week Warner Brothers sent like a $4 million check to Christopher Nolan as like a residual payment that he was owed from Tenet, and there was a big front page article in the Variety magazine this week with the heads, Michael DeLuca and Pam Abdi, who are the heads of Warner Brothers, saying very like clearly so, and exact words that we would love to get back in the Christopher Nolan business. We wanted him back at Warner Brothers. So they're trying to get on his good side. And then Barbie, which is a Warner Brothers movie, debuts at the same weekend as Oppenheimer this upcoming, I think, fall. So I think right now, if you look at all the DC marketing when they were doing DC Fandom and everything, the one set of movies that you saw the least amount of footage from were the Christopher Nolan trilogy of films, because for whatever reason they keep wanting.
I don't think we actually saw any footage from there, did we?
No, not in The Flash. But what I'm trying to say is it's been a trend in recent years where they've been bringing in all these other versions of past DC universes, but haven't really.
But I think they missed out on the opportunity. I think if they were going to do it, they would have done it in this movie.
Yeah,
I don't think they're going to move forward.
It could be in the future.
How protective Christopher Nolan is over his IP, because he is the auteur.
Probably what it is.
Yeah, he's not.
Plus, a lot of people, and I think rightfully so, they say that the Dark Knight trilogy is not even a traditional superhero trilogy.
Yeah,
it's
it shouldn't
so
be
good.
Considered.
It's like it's masterful filmmaking. It goes beyond and past just one genre of superhero.
It's definitely my favorite iteration of Batman that I've ever.
Me too.
Yeah. You could also say the same thing about Joker. Like, I really don't think they would bring in Joaquin Phoenix in that DC universe.
Yeah, they're trying to keep that separate. Yeah. Like there were no references to his Joker. There wasn't any of Matt Reeves' Batman, and so I do believe that eventually we'll probably see them cross over, maybe down the road. But right now it's
unlikely,
just because if they do it, then it automatically sets up an expectation for the audience to see more of it in the near future. And if they don't have
I think when you talk about movies as a money-making business, I think financially, even in business-wise, it's not a good decision, because now DC is like paying Christopher Nolan, right, residuals for their idea that he reiterated. So I don't know if they would even bother. Truly, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that Tenet residual payment feels more like just hey man, we want you back.
We're releasing
Barbie. Hey man, we're trying to avoid a lawsuit because we
here's $4 million.
I
Please
don't
come
think
back.
they just handed that over. He probably was like, haha, it's time to pay me, bitches. Or
Maybe,
there's a
but
lawsuit happening.
I mean, as far as, I mean, this is so many years down the road. I mean, there's some, maybe if there's a lawsuit happening that we don't know about, possibly, but I will say that they're going all out, Warner Brothers is, to get Christopher Nolan back. Now, getting back to this movie, however, since we're talking about financials, here's the latest numbers right now as we are doing this show. Right now, The Flash has, in the first couple of days of its release, Thursday previews and then Friday, made like $24.5 million dollars, which is a pretty good number. It's in over 4,000 theaters. The Elemental, which is a Pixar movie, is made about half as much, around 12 million. And then you got Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and then Transformers coming in after it. This right now is pretty much on track with what the projections were. The projections for this movie, I believe, were like around 70 million at opening weekend, which isn't bad. If you look at like how they calculated that number, initially they were thinking
Not great.
82.
That's not bad, yeah.
But then they dropped the number down to like 70 because of how much the previews made on Thursday. So I think for a movie that people were thinking, well, with all of the stuff that's been going on with Ezra Miller for the last couple of years, are they even going to put it out in theaters? Are people going to even want to watch it? And the fact that, then Ezra Miller was at the premiere and he said a few words which were probably scripted and they kept it very limited. He didn't answer any questions. For the way that they have marketed and gone about releasing this movie, I have to give the Warner Brothers marketing and distribution team credit because they did a really good job of managing to get this out there.
Yeah.
And like DC movies haven't been doing well recently. Like you look at the box office, and I've had this like articles up ready to go for a long time.
Do you mind making it slightly bigger? Because on our end it looks
hard to see.
So if you look at the Shazam numbers, it's 133 million. It's probably the worst superhero flop in the last 2 decades. That's Shazam: Fury of the Gods. And then Black Adam made like less than 400 million. That's a movie whose budget was like $200 million. It lost money in theaters, and it might have made up for it in post theater release and home video and whatnot. But Shazam clearly didn't. That movie was made for about 200 million, just under that, and it didn't even make 150 at the box office. Those are the 2 most recent DC movies. So all things considered, I think The Flash is doing quite well, relatively speaking. And so I would say DC and Warner Brothers have to be happy with that. Now they've got Blue Beetle on the horizon. They've got Aquaman.
There was a stipulation about whether or not they would make a second one of these, and it was only if this did better than what?
I don't know if there was a stipulation. I mean, I guess in my estimation, if this movie makes close to 500 million or more at the worldwide box office, which right now we don't have worldwide numbers. Worldwide numbers don't usually come out till Monday because it's so many countries you have to pull numbers from. But the domestic numbers, I would say by Sunday, we'll have a much better idea what the weekend's going to be. Right now, I would say it is tracking for around 70 to 80 million. It may go on the higher end, but it depends on how well people are talking about it. The Rotten Tomatoes scores for the audiences is at 85, which is pretty high. But I would say overall, for a movie that almost didn't happen and it was 10 years in the making, this isn't bad, especially considering DC's recent track record. And I'll be honest, the last trailer for me that played when I watched this in IMAX, which, by the way, I first watched it in Adobe Prime at AMC, and then I went right after the next IMAX screening, and they gave out this really fancy looking neat little poster. Let me.
So I got one of those too, and I threw it away. But
what? Why would you throw this away?
I didn't want it.
You recycled?
Yeah, I did. Yes,
good.
I did.
See, when you're being offensive, then I'm gonna be defensive. But anyway, I will say this movie is worth watching on the big screen. And as I was saying earlier, about Blue Beetle, that's the next movie coming up. The last trailer to play before the movie started was the Blue Beetle trailer. And I've watched that trailer on my computer screen, on my TV, on my phone, and it looks good in all of those screens. But watching it on the big IMAX screen, I was like, give me this movie right now. I need Blue Beetle in my life right now and that movie, by the way, the Blue Beetle movie trailer got the biggest pop from the audience in IMAX out of any of the trailers ever playing, because they were like, yeah, this looks good. Like literally towards the end where he's like, I can give you whatever the AI in his head is of Zola Marijuana's character is like, you can basically make whatever you think of, and this it's kind of like Green Lantern, the way his powers work. And then he turns into this big sword, and there was a guy next to me who was like, "Oh yeah!" Like I was like, "Okay, cool." So he's excited, which is a good thing. He's also going to be the first Latino DC superhero on the big screen. So I think that movie has the potential to be a breakout hit. And we last week talked about our 5 most anticipated movies, and I was like, this is pretty high up on my list.
It was there.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I love the movie. I don't think it's the best superhero movie of all time or of the year that James Gunn had said at one point. But it's a good movie. Like Angelina, you said it's like 7 out of 10 for you, and you walked out thinking 8 out of 10. I would, in my opinion, give it a 6.5 out of 10. And because the third act gets a little wonky, it's a little convoluted at times, but the core story and the mom and son connection with Nora Allen and Barry Allen is fantastic. I love the moments where every time they're like, I love you more, I loved you first. And then the part at the end where he has to let his mom go. I'm like, that was a scene where I teared up. And when a superhero movie can do that for you.
6 out of 10. It didn't pull on my heartstrings that much, but it was cute.
It did it for me.
Cute.
It was.
Well, you have seen it twice, Dan. You were a little bit.
I technically so I was 10 minutes late to the first one, which actually ended up being like 20 minutes late because I didn't realize they'd played like half as many trailers as they usually do. So then I went to the IMAX version of the movie right after to go watch the first like 15-20 minutes worth. So I technically have only seen it all the way through once, but
I missed like the first 2 minutes of the movie, but we walked in like right as he was,
because there was no way I was gonna miss the Ben Affleck version of the Batman in this movie. I was like, I need to see what he does, and his performance was great. I think he really enjoyed it. The
he
part where
is
Wonder
so weird as Batman. He like talks out of the side of his mouth like this, and it's very strange.
But it was fun when
very strange acting.
The lasso of truth is on his hand with the guy he just rescued, and then they're just like, he's just funny. Like, I just give out my money to just to kind of make up for my like I'm a total social recluse, like, and he's just like saying stuff. And
Ezra Miller's line at that one is really funny. I know what sex is, I've just never had it.
There's just no way to recover from that, is there? Like, nope, just go home.
It was really funny. So I will say, the movie is funny. It's good. Definitely go see it. Let us know what you think. Make sure you like, share, comment, do all the thingies. Or what are we talking about next? What's going on?
But definitely give us a comment about what you think about George Clooney's Batman. Is he going to be the DCU Batman? I'm very interested in seeing what ends up happening here, because they might just say, different timeline. But I wouldn't mind seeing George Clooney back as Batman and giving it another shot. Like, considering how well Michael Keaton's Batman moved in this movie, I was like, there were some good fight scenes.
You know he was not doing those fighting scenes.
No, but still, I mean, like, so what? Like, they use stuntmen all the time.
He did move way quicker, and I was like, there's no way this old man is doing that.
Although Michael Keaton, for somebody his age, Michael Keaton is in really, really good shape.
He is in really and he looks great doing it. Definitely go see the movie, guys.
And then let us know what you think about it. I personally love the George Clooney cameo, and I love Michael Keaton, Ezra Miller's Flash in this, and even Supergirl was pretty good. Anyway, so next we're just gonna throw it over to Andrew. He's gonna tell us all about why everything today sounds like voiceover. But then after that, we'll be back and we'll talk about Reddit. There's a strike going on Reddit. Is it the landed gentry that needs to be taken off their throne, or are they just people who are unpaid workers that the CEO just doesn't like? So we'll talk about all of that and much more.
Voiceover, it's everywhere. It's in television, radio, video games, animation. I've been a voice actor and an audio engineer for voiceover for a long time, and I think it's worth diving into why everything sounds like voiceover.
Voiceovers, how to speak naturally.
Alan!
I do things like voiceover.
You've got the best pipes in the business. His voice.
My voice?
I try to get voiceover work and I'm like, buy this product!
It's not the hardest job in the world, but it's taxing. And
you have to be open to everything if you want to make a living doing this.
It's a truth universally acknowledged.
Wouldn't you like to know, Weather Boy?
Reporters from all over the world talking in a weird, over-accentuated voice like this.
Just to start, I want to say any problem you have with voiceover, has nothing to do with a lack of talent. And you'd be surprised to know that a lot of these voice actors actually do full-on theatrical performances behind a microphone. It's just that they get directed out of them.
In a world where laughter was king.
No, in a world, Jack.
One man.
No.
So let's just start out and say voiceover today has a sound.
Hello?
It's different than it was in the 90s.
Hello, Mr. Burns?
Super different than it was in the 80s or the 60s.
Hello, Mr. Tarantula.
These days we say death to announcers.
Goodbye. Mr. Wabbit, say something.
When tragedy strikes a family. When your life is no longer your own.
What does that mean?
Good news, everyone.
You're fired.
You're fired.
No, you're actually fired.
I'm fired.
Announcers are stylists, they say. Somebody who can articulate a particular set of ideas, not with anything other than the words coming through. We don't hear a lot of that. We used to, even in the 90s, coming soon to Disney DVD and home video. We almost never get that stuff, but it's because we are asked not to be those guys.
Bad dog.
This is a skill set that our generation doesn't really appreciate anymore, and part of that is because we had Don LaFontaine
In a world.
and Don Pardo die Saturday night, and those guys were legendary not because of the sound of their voice, but because they could make you feel a certain thing with a word.
In a world of erectile dysfunction.
What made these different than voiceover today? They were external. They made a crowd feel like a crowd. You were a person in an audience when you heard that, and you were getting information. All commercial voiceover these days is conversational. And rather than acknowledging you as an audience, it recognizes you as an individual. Because it sells better. I'm just the voice in your head, or a friend who's up for anything. It's become a subliminal art form. And what that means is that we are creating moments with you, the listener, simulating friendship or love or some kind of other deep emotion. And so as voice actors, we literally have to conjure up an entire situation in our heads, and we have to put you there. And even though we're saying something like Chiquita bananas, we know that it matters. More and more what happens is directors or corporate people who say, well, make sure you smile more when you say Chiquita, and so you'd end up with Chiquita bananas. Well, okay, why don't we just take away all of that drama and now it's Chiquita bananas? It stops being acting and it starts being little prods of emotional information that get you to feel a certain way. Almost every audition we get is conversational, friendly, off the cuff, no announcers. Anytime you hear an announcer these days, it's essentially a parody of an announcer.
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for. Preparing the Krabby Patty!
This has kind of crept into cartoons, and it's done it a few different ways. Number one is they say, oh, we had some real success with shows like Cowboy Bebop or Adventure Time, Samurai Jack, and what we did is these characters, these cartoons, rather than being
cartoony and over the top and all sorts of fun stuff,
we wanted to hear the real you. And so the cartoon could be ridiculous looking and be really entertaining to watch, but it would just kind of talk like you. And so you'd have a unicorn just sort of be like, hey, what's up, man? How's it going? We call that a grounded read. Grounded means it's grounded in reality. We can believe it, it feels like a real person. But grounded doesn't have to be lifeless. And sometimes that's actually what we're getting there, is a lifeless read.
He's right. We got too much talent and we work too hard to be playing like this. We got to get this train right back on track.
That's right. We all have that attitude. The train will be rolling in no time. Let's do it.
Lifeless reads come from children and celebrities.
Let's go. To infinity and beyond.
The heck are you talking about, man?
You're in shock, so I'm not gonna take that personally. Okay.
Where is she? I don't know.
children generally have no experience with voice acting or acting, and so you get a director who feeds them their lines.
You're a fat bitch.
You're a fat bitch.
When they feed them their lines, they're kind of doing an impression of a kid, and so the kid is doing an impression of a director doing an impression of a kid. And so it ends up just sort of sounding like nothing. And so all this talk about authenticity, I don't know. I've been in the sessions. I see what it looks like from both sides of the glass. Are we really getting a kid? It's hard to say. And then there's celebrities. How many times have you walked out of a movie and been like, I didn't even know that was... Celebrities are used for their name recognition. That's a marketing thing. To be fair, on-camera acting is a completely different skill set than voice acting. On camera, it's here I am. And voice acting is more, where'd I go? When you're a voice actor, your objective is to disappear briefly and let something else come to life. You sort of leave the room. Some of the best voice actors in the world, when they do a voice in front of you, it's like they disappear.
When I do a table read, yeah, I have to jump back and forth. It's like, hey, what's going on? Oh, hello, fat man. Oh, Stewie, how are you? Back and forth.
Celebrities are told, use your regular voice, smile, enjoy it, it's a low pressure day, and lend us your name, essentially. Billy West has said it before.
Shut up and take my money.
The job of the voice actor is to imagine an entire world, an entire situation, and communicate that through a microphone. Celebrities usually don't do that. They're usually just there, and that's all they really have to be. Close your eyes and imagine the setting that that person is in, and you basically feel like you're in the studio with that person sitting down. Granted, sometimes they're the executive producers of these things, and so if they want to be in the movie, yeah, absolutely, let them be in the movie. As a result, we don't get a lot of opportunities to be super cartoony. Not for the past 10 years. I think the best stuff in terms of like fun voices to do has come from adult animation, Family Guy, Rick and Morty, South Park, and if you know anything about those shows, the creators of the shows voice all the characters, so they get to do the funny voices.
Oh, here it comes! Oh, it's going to be a rat!
Rick and Morty's an interesting example too, because they use veteran voice actors to do really, really over-the-top stuff. And so the same way that announcers today are parodies of announcers, those cartoons are parodies of cartoons. But also, cartoons don't really know who their audience is anymore, because we have Disney adults.
Do you think they'll let me sit at the front of Guardians? It is my birthday.
And we have adults that like to watch with their kids. And we have shows that are deliberately made for adults, or made for tweens or teens. We live in this niche economy of entertainment, so animation can be for anyone, but it's not for everyone. But I think imitation is a really good gauge for good voiceover.
Oh, you like my new sweater? I'm trying to do more style.
Do your best impression of Miley Cyrus in Bolt. Or Bolt. Can you even remember what they sounded like? No, but you could probably remember Peter Griffin, Stewie, Homer Simpson, Randy Marsh, Rick Sanchez, Morty. We know what these people sound like, and they leave an impression. And they leave an impression more than just because they have distinct voices. They're real characters. They have flaws, and there's elements of them that we can dislike. If we can hate something, if we can get annoyed by something, if we can recognize something real and connect to it through whatever lens, that's a good character. A big problem with stuff right now, commercials, animation, video games, everybody is aiming for everything to be likable. Commercials need you to have a good association with the product. Cartoons, even if they're adult cartoons, you need to side with them ethically. We don't get a chance to judge people's character quite so much, except on these shows that have really horrible people on them. We don't necessarily imitate how they act, but there's a certain amount of comfort in horrible characters because we can relate to them because nobody's perfect. Perfect characters aren't very relatable. Other things that are affecting it, we have people who are constantly undercutting the industry at like a 90 to 99% discount on pay-to-play sites. They replace good voice acting with decent sound quality. Then there's AI. People think AI is going to take over voice acting, but I personally don't.
Deepfake technology is incredible.
Artificial intelligence, or AI.
I went down to the office because they were making a robot of me.
People make me nervous.
I thought we weren't supposed to tell people.
I'm sorry, Dave.
I'm aware of advanced AI software that can paint what you tell it to and come up with all kinds of ideas, but even that doesn't have the continuity of a mind. It doesn't react, it doesn't calculate everything that's led up to this moment in this person's life. It doesn't read the room, it doesn't collaborate with directors, and sonically, it's the sound of one person talking to nobody in particular, which makes everything kind of sound like your GPS. To program all of the things that a voice actor does in a session for every character in everything, it would take a long time, but you know, if it costs them less, yeah, maybe we'll start hearing more of it. The one last shred of hope we have there is it gonna sell products? Are people gonna keep watching cartoons if the voiceover is sterile? You know, and if we got rid of announcers because they weren't human, why are robots a better idea? I don't know. At the end of the day, the audience will tell the industry what it wants, but voiceover is always a couple laps behind everything else. The trends are changing, and animation, which takes years to produce, is learning that it can't do stuff like political humor so well, because by the time it comes out, it's been a year and a half or two since the political event even happened. I am noticing as I audition that fun characters are kind of coming back. So why does voiceover sound the way it does? Is it the writing? Is it the directing? Is it corporate entities stepping in and saying, well, actually, could you make it sound a little happier? But at the end of the day, good voice actors can make anything sound compelling. It's all about finding a way in.
Well, that was Andrew talking about voiceover, which everything seems to sound like voiceover these days.
That was long. I forgot how long the essay was.
Mhm.
It's pretty good, but
yeah.
I was like, when does it end? But it's very informative, very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's good.
it's a very thorough, examination of the whole industry. Honestly, it's I do miss the trailer voices. Like even if it was kind of funny, like I wish they're starting to come back. There's more of it now than there was a few years ago where we were just completely getting away from it. But yeah, I do miss some of that. Like the honest trailers, do a good job of kind of keeping the torch lit for that kind of style. But,
it's hilarious what they do.
You know what else is hilarious? It's the Reddit strike. So
I don't think it's hilarious.
it's a bit hilarious to me because I was like, wait, what is this? Okay, can I just hot take to start this whole topic off? Let me actually find the article. Where is this? Okay, here it is. Oh no, that's a different article.
I think we should start with explaining what the strike is about, because the strike didn't start because moderators were not paid. That's the whole point. Moderators were more than happy to keep working for free. Like I had the numbers in that article that if each moderator was paid $20 per hour, it would cost $3.4 million annually, which is like around 3% of the whole Reddit's revenue to cover that cost. So it's something that the moderators were doing, happily before the strike. And we should kind of clarify this is not why people started striking. The reason for the strike, the reason why the subreddits went private was because the company, what it seems like they're preparing for the public sale essentially.
Like an IPO.
Exactly. They want to go public, which means they want to become slightly bit richer. The problem with that is they have given only 1 month notice to people that are using Reddit, and mainly the software developers who are people with their, a lot of the products. Like there is this one big one app called Apollo. They have over 1 million daily users, and their entire kind of product is based on Reddit's IPA. Now, if the company is selling API, sorry, what did I say?
IPA.
IPA
Would be something very different.
I love a good IPA.
I don't even drink, but yeah, IPA.
I only
API.
say metaverse, so we're all here. We all have our things. It's fine.
So access to its IPA. So yeah, third-party apps such as Apollo are essentially screwed because the CEO of Reddit quoted Apollo to start paying, $400 million? No, $20 million a year in order for them to make the money back. And if you compare Reddit to all other social networks, they're barely making any money. So we understand why they're going public. We understand why it's happening. It happens with time. The problem is transitions like this, changes like this, they take months and years. Whereas here, it seems like they are in some financial trouble because they have given 1 month time. And users of Apollo, they have yearly subscriptions. So
what
of course,
is Apollo? Can we break that down? Because I don't know what Apollo is.
So Apollo is like a third-party app, essentially. So their API is based on Reddit. So essentially, if you have a product, you can take the data, you can take everything that's on Reddit and use it in your own product, essentially. Or
I can't even read that, Dan. I'm sorry. Okay, formally Reddit. Okay.
But yeah, anyway, there's drama. Obviously, with Reddit, there's always drama. So there was the CEO of Reddit had a phone call with the CEO of Apollo, and the CEO of Reddit was not aware that the call was being recorded, and that phone call kind of leaked, and there was essentially this big misunderstanding, and the CEO of Reddit ended up saying that he was being blackmailed by the CEO of Apollo, which wasn't the case, because if you listen to the whole conversation.
But it is illegal to record someone without their knowledge.
No, if you're in Canada.
Oh,
he was in Canada.
In the US it's illegal. Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I'm just gonna not be calling anybody when I'm in Canada.
No,
I know. No.
illegal.
If you're no. That's the whole loop. You can actually go to Canada. You don't need to be Canadian. You can just be recording from Canada, and it's absolutely fine. Apparently, because that was my first
I mean, you know what? Now that I'm in Canada, I'm just not gonna get a roaming plan for my phone. I'm just I cannot talk to you. I'm in Canada. I'm afraid I might get recorded.
Yeah.
Because I'm in Canada. So I'm just going to go back to the US
and then
I'll
anyone
call you.
calling you from Canada, Dan, I could go to Canada and call you on my number, pay the little extra surcharge and record you and not get in trouble for it.
Well, then we're not going to be talking while you're in Canada. You need to come back to the US. Otherwise, we're not going to have
I'm not picking up any Canadian phone calls anymore.
I'm just not. It says Ontario. Sorry, I can't talk to you
Can't talk. Vancouver? No.
Please leave a voice message. I'll get back to you some other time.
Going back to that, it's a bit shady. So they do try to do a little dirty maneuvers, and obviously with, as Dan mentioned, the most recent statement of the CEO of Reddit, it's not looking pretty. And one other important thing I wanted to mention, that he did note that 80% of Reddit's top 5,000 communities have reopened after 2-day content strike. So even though the moderators put the subreddits onto the private mode, some of them are still closed indefinitely, but a lot of them got back up. However, people started migrating to the other platform, which I checked it out this morning. It's Metadrone, or not Metadrone. It has a really weird name, but I really love their H1 slogan. Speaking of clever marketing, their slogan was the database that's not for sale. I love that they responded quite quickly, and they sort of play onto the whole drama. And it's a shame, because Reddit has always been my
Can we pull up the numbers for how many people use Reddit annually? Because I feel like every day I'm looking at some sort of subreddit. Like, it is such a big part of American culture, and I'm sure internationally too.
And bear in mind, there's so many moderators who love and respect Reddit as it is, that they have been working for free for years just to like moderate it. They do
Can we
want
also
to
talk about how young the CEO is? I'm so sorry I cut you off. I was so shocked when I saw this photo. I
he's a
expected the CEO of Reddit
douchebag.
to be like really old, and it's
I mean,
Well,
the guy
technically, this
who's-
is him in 2017. This picture is 6 years old.
Yeah, and the guy who started Reddit, it's he's not the CEO. He's retired.
I just
not
want
retired,
to,
but
before we go any further, I just want to kind of rebuttal a few points that you made.
Right.
Well, so okay, users are moving over to a different platform, but are they really gonna? Because think about this,
No,
right? Like, okay,
it's
when
not gonna
Elon
blow up.
Musk. Well, Elon Musk took over Twitter. People were like, we're going to be going off Twitter. We got Mastodon. And like, where is Mastodon now? I don't know.
Mastodon, that was it.
Yeah.
Yes.
What
Mastodon.
the hell what happened to Mastodon? Remember when people were like, oh, WhatsApp sucks. Signal, please.
Yeah.
Where's Signal today? It's like, I get that. Like, there's always this movement, but I don't think that in both of those cases, those platforms are very good. I've used one of them myself, but they're just not the viable alternative for everybody. That the main platform, it just doesn't replace the main platform.
And the whole point is the data is still there, and Reddit still very much is going to be there. However, it does affect a lot of, it's essentially like a cold-blooded action done too shortly. I'm not saying they shouldn't have done it, because you can do whatever the hell you want with your company. Sure, go ahead, make money. You guys are being smart about it. Do it, make it public. However, give people more time to make their own transitions, to inform their own users that this change is going to happen, that we're no longer are going to be operating. Like, it's going to cost millions. But
can I say though, what didn't you say the time they gave them was like a month? It's a month advance notice. I mean, look, honestly, like the way the terms and conditions work again, I'm trying to play devil's advocate. I'm not taking sides here in this situation. But in most terms and conditions don't give you any kind of leeway. Like, for example, Facebook could tomorrow change their policy and do whatever changes they do to your Facebook page. That is the primary way that your small business reaches its community.
Sure,
and
but
you
if you
kind of don't
listen
have a choice.
So Mark Zuckerberg was again on Lex Fridman recently. It was like a really amazing episode. And you do hear that sense of awareness and kind of acknowledgement. Obviously, it's a brilliant PR. If you're Mark Zuckerberg, you do lose a lot of battles to get that kind of rep and have that kind of representation and know what to say, what to answer. However, he did come across as everything he does, it comes with the user first. Like, he wouldn't affect businesses, or he would actually be fair before he took any drastic actions. What Reddit, he was also, that's another thing. The Reddit CEO was also recorded. That was another thing. Like, his team is not very faithful, it seems like this. There's a footage of him also saying that, like, yeah, we should just like stand still because we shouldn't give a shit about any of those protests. And obviously he's being disrespectful to the moderators and stuff. It's not pretty kind of finale. Like, the steps that are being taken, it's not pretty, it's not cute. And, you know, it's 3%. It's 3% of Reddit's revenue. That's how much it would have costed them to even pay those people. So I think, you know, it's same as with the writers. You should be a little bit more respectful for the community and the users you've
because
built.
the community makes Reddit, right?
Literally.
Reddit, especially Reddit and forums like Reddit. I mean, the community is Reddit. It's not Reddit without the community doesn't exist.
He does consider changing the policy
15
to
million people use Reddit. That's the number. That's insane.
He wants to change some of the issues. Essentially, what was it? Essentially the fact that users can vote or ban moderators. So if some moderators, because there are certain popular subreddits that have been sort of run by unpopular moderators that were quite, harsh and things, and they want to kind of get rid of it. So apparently the CEO is more willing to kind of, look into that. But with the whole API being paid, essentially being all locked up, and it's just not looking good.
So what is the primary strike about, though? It's about it going public and them choosing not to pay the moderators.
Officially, they're not going public just yet, but that's normally what happens to the companies. They need to start making their API billable. Essentially, they need to start charging for it. They need to.
In which should lead directly to them paying the moderators, except they are making no movements.
And that's another point of the strike, that if you guys are about to get filthy rich, how about the all residues that you owe us, that we've been busting our balls for years, and they're not even considerate.
Right, but look, my counter argument to that would be like, okay, so that change happens now. We start making that extra money now. We weren't making that extra money before, so why should we give you backdate those?
I don't think back
because they're about to.
Think moving forward, moderators should get
paid.
I don't by the way, back pay. Yeah.
No, and that's fine. I mean, look, if that's one thing where I'd be like, okay, yeah, I guess it's fair, because if those people basically like it's like a job for them to maintain.
But they don't want to do that. That's the whole point.
But ultimately, here's the thing. If they decide to do it, fine. But otherwise, as per the the way Reddit is set up, there's no obligation on the part of Reddit to do this. It seems like those users need Reddit more than those moderators need Reddit as a platform more than Reddit needs that. I mean, look, ultimately, if Reddit's people do start to leave in enough of quantities that Reddit starts to see like, oh shit, it's actually affecting our revenue, then I'm sure they'll make those steps. But right now, it's like, if they're bluffing, like the people on Reddit have to call their bluff. And that's where in a lot of social media platforms, it's kind of like what the WGS strike is, right? Like if you're a union, there's enough unity there. There's enough structure behind it that you can force that change because you are a union. Mm-hmm. There is no union of moderators in Reddit in large enough of a quantity that they can't really take. Like you said, like 80% of the people who went on strike have already kind of returned. Like,
no.
There's
Wait. That's what the CEO stated. That's not necessarily true, and that I cannot confirm that. Like that's not.
But
true.
But still, like even if like say half of those people came back, I'm like that's gonna compromise whatever.
That's the whole point. Moderators won because that's the whole point. Moderators aren't stupid, and they will want to be paid for the job they're doing from now on. The thing is, they're not going to.
That's fair. So I mean, if Reddit says no and then they leave, then I guess it's Reddit's move. Like, okay, well, I guess we'll have to pay them. But the other thing that I do want to kind of point out here, where it seems to be a point of concern, is look, when they have these third-party apps that are using Reddit's API for free, and then Reddit says, "Oh, we're gonna charge you for that now because we need to make money and this is our content that you are taking and using."
Again, that's absolutely fine, but you give people more time. You don't give people 1 month and expect them to pay 20 million.
But from the business side, I'm like, they don't owe you any more than even a day's notice with the way these terms and conditions usually.
Yeah,
if you read
but that's the whole point.
Like,
but that's contradictory that's contradicting to the whole idea of Reddit. What Reddit has been, where Reddit started, what the community is. Yeah. What they're doing is a dirty way of handling business, something that Reddit was so proudly kind of standing for years. It was the only social media that was worth still. It wasn't as toxic, essentially, because of the moderators who decided to keep it safe and clean, and they were doing fantastic job. That's the whole point. That right now what they are doing a completely fair enough move. They do want to go public, but you just do remember where your success is coming from, what built you, what made you happen. The CEO didn't make Reddit good. It was the moderators.
I don't really know anything else about this other than what I've heard from you. I haven't read anything about it. It hasn't come up for me. And so just speaking from like a point of maybe the people that don't really know what's going on, it sounds like Reddit essentially, subreddits are shutting down left and right because the CEO has announced.
No, they're going private.
There's
a different.
Which basically makes them inaccessible to anybody trying to access them publicly.
Yeah. So they're not shutting down just because it's important, that you cannot. I mean, you can remove the whole subreddit.
It's like on YouTube when you make a video private, unless you're on that account that it's uploaded from, or you got an invite to it, and as another YouTube user, you can't access that video. You can't search for it. You won't find any content on there. It's gonna be like, oh, it's private.
Which is affecting Reddit overall. So the hope is that the moderators are hoping that they can push the CEO into paying them. Is that the primary point?
No, it's to not charge them for the. It's to for the first 2 weeks. It was about the charging, because that's the whole point. People love Apollo. We keep forgetting Apollo is a third-party app that Redditors use, and people love it. So obviously, Reddit being the community, they will stand behind someone like Apollo who's being treated unfairly, and they will be like, okay, if you're doing this dirty work to these guys, we're out of here, because this is not what we thought Reddit was.
Yeah,
I think dirty is a point of like the dirty part of it is a little more of a relative term.
Yeah.
It's scary, your opinion, because we've made films together, and the way you see the business making.
No, well, I'm saying, look, I'm
fair game. Is it?
No,
time?
Look,
I mean, that 1 month's notice is enough notice. Maybe not enough to fork up $20 million. I feel like maybe there should be a transitory period after the announcement. But I do agree that it's like that's way more notice than any app is supposed to give you.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, let me give you guys an analogy, right? Like recently, Netflix did this. They announced it last year. They were like,
I'm
"Look,
speechless with you guys. I honestly don't know what to say.
Hold on, like
Hollywood for you.
I think maybe US, Europe kind of clash of culture, kind of way of looking at business ethics. I think like here we have like kind of like I don't know, like it's not that far-fetched from
well, okay, so
like,
let me
capitalism.
It's not okay.
No,
so
it's not even capitalism. It's not even Elon Musk. That's the whole point. The whole world lost its shit when Elon Musk took over Reddit and he started like tidying up. But that wasn't even.
You mean Twitter?
Twitter, sorry. That was it. But that wasn't
well,
even
not
like.
Everybody loved it.
Yeah, but that wasn't even remotely close to that kind of bullshit that these guys are pulling off.
But hold on. Let me give you guys an analogy in terms of where I'm coming at this from, right? Like, and then what Angelina, you mentioned about like 1 month's notice, right? So last year, Netflix announced that they were going to basically no longer let people just share their passwords with whoever. They were going to limit password sharing, and basically, unless you were connecting from the same IP address, which basically means in the same Wi-Fi network or same house, let's say, same apartment, you were going to have, if you're going to log into that account and it wasn't you, then you were going to need a different login, and you can kind of basically attach yourself to the main account, but you're gonna have to pay an extra like $5 a month, which to be able to access it from that separate IP address. Otherwise, you just can't give your password for Netflix off to any random friend or family member, and they're living across on the other side of the country and watching your Netflix. And the reason why they were doing that is because people would be like, okay, I got a Netflix account, I'm gonna share it with all of my friends, so they don't have to get their own Netflix. But to Netflix, that's like A, in the terms and conditions that says you can't do that, and B, that's revenue that's being stolen from us. It's kind of like when, music piracy was a big deal before iTunes came around.
LimeWire,
Napster, and then now, like they introduced password sharing restrictions, and actually they've had a huge spike in their revenue because of all those people who are signed up to it.
It's 58.
No, but hold on.
It's 58% of the free labor you're talking about.
No. I do understand where you're coming from on that side, and that's a whole other side of the argument. But what I'm trying to say is, from the perspective of the company, like Netflix said, okay, look, we are losing revenue because people are doing what's against the terms and conditions. Therefore, we're going to take steps to limit that. Now, that's not the case here in terms of what Reddit is doing, because they've made their API available for free. However, as a business looking to make more revenue, and certainly something that's equivalent to their peers like a YouTube, for example, or Facebook and like Meta that make over $100 billion in revenue, and Reddit makes $1 billion, which is literally 1% of less than 1% of the Meta revenue. And they only make it through advertising, and they say, okay, well, how else can we make that money? Well, there's all these third-party apps that are using content in our like website that we host on our servers, and we pay like our staff to maintain the back end. Now, granted, they don't pay the moderators, but like, you know, the back end systems are, you know, basically they pay
that's
for
what
that.
I mean. I'm
So
finding
now they're
it.
charging
I understand your point,
for
but
that. I
you're
think
bringing
that's fair.
no, because you're bringing a completely irrelevant example, because we're not talking about moderators involved. We're talking about a company that is fully, you know, it's a $1 trillion company. It's fully employed. It's been running okay for a while. Here you're talking about half, like 56% of the old content of Reddit being removed. So there's so many moderators, there's so many subreddits on Reddit, there's just so many more people involved that were standing by what Reddit was, and what they're doing are essentially saying, we don't give a shit about you. We never did. We just want to make more money. That's what they're doing.
I think the "don't give a shit about you" comes from how the CEO has spoken about it with the landed gentry comment. That's certainly not a good look
and he has
from
been
the
even
PR
caught
side.
saying, that's the whole
And-
point. He has been caught saying this in the
Yeah.
office
I mean, and
amongst
I
the
get
team.
that. Like, that's not a good look. I mean, but I do understand their argument in favor of, okay, we want to make more money, and therefore this is more way we can
but
monetize the business.
keep in mind the people that made you happen. That there's just
Right.
something like, let's just
But
be cool
when you
businessmen.
say that though, no, I get it. But when you say keep in mind the people that got you there, like the way Reddit seems to be set up is it was always meant to be a platform where people can come and use it, and they gave the people the platform to go and do what they wanted to do, and then it's up to the people to get involved as much as they want to. Like nobody's like, okay,
But
again,
they have been
trying to play devil's
but
advocate.
they
Nobody's
have been
asking
doing
these-
they have been doing revenue. They have been doing revenue. They have been making revenue, sorry.
No, they have. No, that's not the point.
Of
what
course,
I'm
they
trying
have
to say,
ads.
No, I know, but what I'm trying to say is
They have
technically,
premium
again,
subscriptions.
all I'm trying to say is technically Reddit didn't tell the moderators to spend like a full-time job's worth of time.
But they have been
investing themselves on the
growing.
platform.
But for years they have been growing, and they have been sort of recruiting. They gave the birth to this baby that essentially was sort of kind of doing things on their own, and it was actually going great. And now they're capitalizing on someone else's hard labor. So if they're going public, then why don't they at least acknowledge moderators? That's the whole point.
They haven't
They can
technically
do whatever
said
the
that
hell.
they're going public soon. Like that's in the article. They haven't really said that they're going to do that.
Yeah, but
anytime
they haven't defended this, and that's normally what happens. The API
So,
becomes private
well,
the
then
moment.
let me ask you this: like, from the side of the moderators and the people, like, so let's say if you feel wronged by what's going to happen here or what is happening, then what? Let's pretend that
I'm
the Reddit
not a
moderators.
moderator.
have-
I
no,
don't
no, I
feel
know.
wrong. I'm just speaking
No.
from like a simple.
Right, but let's say the
Common
users
decency.
of Reddit, like there's a union of Reddit users and moderators, right? Let's just pretend there is. And if they were to enter into a negotiation with the Reddit, like, company and say the CEO of Reddit, what would they be looking for here? Let's say Reddit does monetize
But
the
they
API.
are. That's the whole point of the CEO of Apollo having the conversation with the Reddit. He was actually trying to get the deal from him, which was essentially spun out completely out of context and was turned into a blackmail, which didn't happen. He was actually trying to make a deal with him, and the guy was like, nah, because he essentially misunderstood something, and the whole thing backfired. And
I'll be
he
honest, I have
essentially-
not read into that. Like, so I don't know.
Yeah, so I think it
that
would be
is.
best if you guys kind of dive deep into that, because that has been happening for the last 2 weeks, and after you kind of
for
have
the people
all the
watching
evidence.
this that don't see that, can we get some links up for people, kind of thing?
Yeah.
Because it's hard without all of
I
the
mean,
context to sort of have this conversation. But
Yeah,
most
it's
people
all
are
over
not gonna
news.
have
And
this
I did send you the article before the recording. So it's all in this article, actually. It's all explained there.
But even stating like, I think this is kind of where things get a little meshed. Online is owned by someone, right? Like someone owns Reddit and they have to profit from that or they can't keep running. And so I think and I do think it's more of an American mindset. If you have to make money, there's ways to do it. And I think it's a good business decision. And I'm actually shocked they haven't charged third-party apps before to use their content. I think that was definitely a bad business decision on Reddit's end before. However, the CEO is acting is not okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like, if you separate it, just like you separate church and state, I think business-wise, Reddit is making a good decision.
My God.
Yeah, it's a good business move because they're trying to make more money. Yeah,
being nice move.
Yeah, exactly. It's bad PR in terms of how they're going about it. But like, even like, there's a parts of what he said here, like where he says, okay, look, he's talked about some form of revenue sharing and that subreddits could become businesses if they choose to. It's another conversation. So he's being purposefully vague, whatever. I get that. But like, the point that I'm trying to make here is if Reddit wants to make more money by monetizing their API, I think that's a totally fair thing to do.
Yeah.
Apple charges everybody in the App Store who puts their content up there on a per transaction basis. They take a little chunk out of it. So does Amazon, so does Google and the Android store. All of these companies do that. That's how they make their money. Yeah. So it's nothing new from the business side of the world. I just think like, yeah, sure, if these moderators want to be compensated for their work and moving forward want to have more of a voice in those decisions, those are different conversations. I think to kind of confuse them with the conversation of we're trying to monetize, other aspects of our business to grow our revenue, that's a different conversation than talking about user representation.
But it's the same conversation. It's the same conversation. It's literally what every single article is combining, and that's literally what's happening on Reddit. What every single conversation on Hacker News, on Reddit is about. It's combining all those points. So no, this is not confluting all those points into one. This is actually all related.
No, I'm not saying they're not related. I'm saying, yes, these things are connected, but at the same time.
I agree with Dan on every level. I'm sorry.
Angelina, you said that, Reddit made a mistake by not charging people on API earlier. Like, I really don't think you fully understand.
They would have been making a lot more money.
Yeah, but that's not how software developing works. That's not how product making works. Okay, and filmmaking industry is slightly different.
Built off of using content from another app, they should have to pay for that. Exactly. Because Apollo was making money on Reddit stuff. So they should
like
have
Apollo's
to
making money, but
use it.
Yeah, but it's their. It has been this way for years. You just give a little bit of heads up, and you do acknowledge the moderators. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying they shouldn't be going public.
1000%. I don't think Dan or I are disagreeing with you on that. We don't like how it's being handled, right? But the business decision is sound.
Okay, I'm just tired of this.
She's over it. She's done. I think we just have like a different agreement. I think.
No, we don't have any agreement. That's the whole point. We don't.
I'm
not mad. I just don't think you should speak about things that you haven't prepared for. Like, you haven't acknowledged the article. You haven't done the research enough to, try to combine some facts.
No, but I wouldn't say that's
I asked
fair.
you what the deal was. You explained it. The way you explained it, I'm going off of that.
But that's the whole point. You're not
and
really.
To be fair, look, I read the article, and so I am understanding like all of these different sides of the arguments. I read the article from top to bottom, and I totally get it.
But you said that these are two different discussions.
No, well, look. Ultimately, the core of the argument, there are two. I'm saying, look, they can all be under the same umbrella, but that doesn't mean they could be like different like bubbles that are sort of under the same umbrella, like if you want to call it that. Where one thing is like let's just look at it from the side of the company. They want to make more money, so they want to monetize the API. Now, there's moderators who are like, okay, well, then that means that all of a sudden these third-party apps that we like to use in preference to your own app, now the third-party app will lose access because the third-party app is not going to be paying you for that content because they either can't afford to, or it completely like it destroys their business model, because up until now they've been making money by basically getting this content for free from Reddit, but now they'll have to pay for it, and they can't be profitable, or they can't make money to basically keep doing what they've been doing. Now, to me, that says, oh, it's Apollo and the other people who are using the API, those third-party apps are the ones who need to kind of figure out their business model, because it's not like Reddit's job to kind of tell Apollo like how to run their business. Apollo up until now was getting something for free that now they're going to get charged for, which, yes, they can come to an agreement and negotiate, and hopefully that will happen eventually, and they can come to a fair deal. This happens all the time. You might remember a couple of years ago, it was like some platform like Visa cards or something. You could not use it on Apple's App Store because they couldn't come to a deal. And all of a sudden, Apple stopped accepting like a certain card companies issued cards. It didn't matter what bank you had the card from. It was processed through Visa or like MasterCard, I think it was. You just couldn't make it work until they came to an agreement. That happens with movie theaters and studios. Like, these negotiations are on the business side of things. I think where the users are hurting here the most is because they're getting squeezed out in the middle. And yeah, I think if these moderators are doing all this work on the website, then they should be getting paid. And yeah, I mean, that's a conversation that has to be had. And it is connected, but I just don't see how like the revenue conversation needs to have input from the moderators unless Reddit gives them access, because for all we know, the moderators could walk away. They're like, we're done with Reddit. We're going to do our own thing. And at that point, Reddit's the one that's going to hurt. And then it's going to be on Reddit to decide whether they want to change tact or not. But until then, if the moderators are like, well, we're here, we're going to stand our ground, ultimately Reddit could just shut off all those subreddits and close them down. It's going to hurt Reddit, but it's also the moderators lose access to all that content. The content that they signed off on terms and conditions that Reddit technically owns. Like, this is the world of the internet and social media today. I'm not saying it's perfect.
I don't think moderators signed any contract with Reddit.
Not contract. Like, when you set up an account on a website and you check off the terms and conditions box, that's what I mean by that. Like, it's the same thing on any other social media site. You know, there's certain freedoms or things that you get restricted automatically. Now, I mean, we can talk about this at length and keep going. All I will say is it's a very interesting story. It's a huge platform. Reddit is one of the biggest websites in the world. This article kind of talks about Reddit standing as literally, like, in terms of traffic around the world, it's in like the top 5, top 10 all the time. So it is a big part of the internet culture out there. But ultimately, I have to say, like, look, if they're trying to make more money, they're trying to make more money. That's their prerogative as a company. I just hope that they treat their users well. It seems like the CEO hasn't exactly been doing the best thing in terms of treating their users well. And that's something where they can improve upon. But that doesn't mean they can't monetize their own platform. You know, I mean, if the moderators decide to walk away as a result, like what Twitter users did and went to Mastodon, that's up to them to do. If they want to stick around and try to find some kind of work through, they can. One thing I would recommend doing is maybe unionize. And then you can actually get like the power, together you can have more power as a group than you would as individual moderators. And therefore you can affect greater change with the larger numbers of people involved together on the same page.
What would that union even be called? The RMO or something?
The Redditors of the world. I don't know, like ROTW.
Redditors Union.
I'm not trying, whatever the name, union names come in all shapes and sizes. Like, there's the AMPTP, there's WGA, there's DGA, SAG. I mean, SAG-AFTRA. Like, some people are like, what is AFTRA? Oh, remember there was like when SAG and AFTRA were two things and then they combined. So now, that I don't think doesn't matter. But anyway, what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. Of course, I'm sure this is a topic that affects, a lot of, all of us have been to Reddit at some point.
50 million people.
So yeah, 50 million is a lot. All right. Well, before we finish the show, I just wanted to ask you guys, next week, Wes Anderson's Asteroid City goes into wide release. It's already out this weekend in some theaters. You can go see it, especially in bigger cities. But if you're interested in checking this movie out, I mean, let me ask the question, are you interested in checking this movie out? It's Wes Anderson. He's got like all kinds of A-list actors in this, like, Scarlett Johansson, Tom Hanks. Is this a movie that, as the graphic says, tickles your fancy? Anybody?
Was that an actual question? Oh,
That's
yeah.
an actual question. Does it
I didn't know who you were talking to. Yeah, I was actually supposed to go see a pre-screening last week. I was really sad I had to miss it. So I'm definitely going to catch it this week. I'm excited. It's good stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, Mags, any chance you're going to go watch
It's Wes
Asteroid City?
Anderson.
Yeah.
I have to.
You
I might not
all right,
have time to do it, but it's at
well,
one
you can let
point
us
and
know.
another. You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you going
I'm
to
gonna
see it, John?
I'm gonna probably go see it. Because there's no other big movie coming out next week. So it happens to be like the rare weekend this summer where you're not gonna have a big blockbuster that's gonna be opposing it. So I might go watch it because it looks very interesting, and I haven't seen a ton
Have
of
you
Wes
seen The
Anderson
French
stuff before.
Dispatch?
No,
The last
I've
one.
not seen.
That's why I'm a bit weary because it was not as great.
That's what I heard. It was
live
mixed.
up to. Yeah, it didn't live up to like other Wes Anderson pieces. So.
Well, hopefully this is a return to form then for a director that's known for doing, very peculiar work. And the visuals for this movie look fantastic. It's got a bit of a UFO tinge to it. It looks like this takes place like we're in near Area 51 or something, like a town in that part of the country, in Nevada, I suppose. So yeah, I'm interested. I want to see what this looks like. The actors in this movie. I mean, there's a lot of A-list stars, and they always are. Like it's Wes Anderson. So. All right. Well, we'll be talking about it next week. It's going to be a fun show. I'm sure maybe we'll feel some aftershocks from this Reddit conversation. Interested in seeing how that plays out. All right. Well, guys, check us out on socials. We are everywhere. We are on TikTok too, which I don't know if that's listed here. Yeah.
Be our friend, please.
Yeah, please be our friend. We need friends in this world.
So
Everybody
funny.
needs friends in this world. You can also listen to this show as a podcast on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, all of your big, platforms for podcasting. And of course, we thank you for watching the show. We look forward to having you back next week as we talk about movies, TV, music, and as we always say, existential philosophies of life, which is, what we're all about, just like what we were just talking about a few minutes ago. And until next time, it's been fun. Stay curious, guys.
Bye, guys.